Okay, let's open up in a word of prayer. Father, thank you for the opportunity to come here and to look into the importance of truth and understanding what truth is and all the different perspectives of truth that are out there in the world today, Father. And we just pray as we look into these various faiths and perspectives on truth and reality, and as different people of the world view or at least attempt to view who you are, Father, help us to just understand these perspectives, that it will prepare us to give an answer to what we believe. Father, ultimately we are here to understand our own belief system and our own faith system, but over these next 8 weeks we want you to help us to understand, and that we may be enlightened as to where these other faith systems come from. That we know that most of them that we're going to be looking at over these 8 weeks will not represent who you are. And we just want to understand where they're coming from so that we can better understand our own perspective on truth and the Word of God. And thank you for the time here. We ask that you would quicken us, keep us alert, keep us focused, and just bless our time here together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, we got a few handouts. We're now here. If you have not signed up for the class, it's fine. Anybody can come. You can come however you want to come, as often as you want to come. The only thing I ask is if you could put your name and email address on this before you leave today. Only for the reason of this, is that we are recording these, video recording them, and I'm going to be posting them on the website. And I'm also going to be sending, for everybody that's on that list, I'm going to send an email with a link so that you can see the class. Now, if you've already come, you may not care, but if you've missed the class, you may want to catch it, and I'm going to be sending it to everybody who's on that list. So if you missed the class, you can go to that link and you can catch it. But it will also be available on our website if you go to the calendar item, that's Calvary Classroom. And you go to that, you just click on that calendar item, and it'll take you to a page that's going to have all the classes. It'll have the handouts. It'll have the PowerPoint presentations. So you can get all that stuff off of the website. Where to start? What do you got? I made. Oh, you know what? There's a Bible over here. All things I forgot my Bible. It's sitting in my office. Does anybody own this Bible? Somebody keeps saying left this Bible. It's a really nice, brand new Bible. I'm just going to borrow it for tonight, but it's been sitting over here for weeks. I don't know if it belongs to anybody. There's a name in it and everything. It's a very nice word for today, Chuck Smith Bible. So, anyway, one last thing.
This is an awful lot like that.
So what we're going to be doing here over the next 8 weeks is we're going to be studying the world's major religious systems. Some of the minor ones, and then oh, there's one more thing before we leave today. I do have a syllabus. I forgot to print it out. But just to go over what we're going to do, we're going to be studying the major religious systems, and then the last 2 classes, we're going to be studying what I call non-traditional faiths. Some may call it cults, but they're not all of them are going to be cults, so I just call them non-traditional faiths. that some of them may be, at least two of them, I would still consider Christianity, which is Seventh-day Adventists and Oneness Pentecostals, which I feel still fall under the umbrella of Christianity, but their belief systems are, and their origins are different enough that we want to consider them. The one faith system that we're not really going to study in any depth at all in this class is going to be Christianity. Come every Sunday. You want to study Christianity, come out to church. We are going to talk about it a little bit in the third class when we study Judaism, sort of a natural progression that as we study Judaism, we'll study just some of the basic things of Christianity, because one thing that this class is going to be is this class is going to be a study of major faith from a Christian perspective. Okay? So we're going to be looking at these and comparing them to Christianity. Okay? Eric, could you do me a favor? In my office, there is top of this kind of a drop safe. There's a little black bag with a little red circle. If you can get that for me. Just all right. So we're going to be, as we study these different faith systems, we're going to be comparing them to Christianity. So we're definitely going to be looking at everything from a Christian perspective. However, as we look at the first thing we're going to talk about in this class is a definition of religion. Okay, because the word religion is defined about as many ways as you want to define it. It all depends on the perspective. It all depends on what you're talking about. So, we've all heard that Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship, and that's absolutely true. If you define religion as basing your relationship to God on the things that you offer Him, and that's one of the definitions of religion, is a relationship with God, whereas we offer something to God to please Him. Okay? We're actually going to use a much more generic definition of religion just so that we can sort of encompass what we're talking about here. And so all of Christianity will fall under the definition of religion in that case. So that's why I don't want to get people confused as we... What's that?
Confusing.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Just give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to do this. But I have. Kimberly will appreciate this. I'm feeling a little sugar low coming on. I just want to make sure that I don't get weird. I'm fine, but I feel it, so I'm just going to take a look. Sorry to interrupt the class. So we're going to use sort of a more broad definition of the term religion as a system of beliefs and practices that provides values to give life meaning and coherence by directing a person toward transcendence. This is by Winfried Cordovan, he's the author of this book. We don't have a textbook that we're going to be using. However, for the most part, I am using this book. It's called Neighboring Faiths by Winfried Cordovan. It's a college-level textbook. So if you're into dry reading and pretty heavy stuff, go for it. I think it's the best book. Cheapest I could find out there was somewhere around $20, $25. if you're into pictures and charts and things, this is a little bit more visual. It has the major religions, and it has them listed, different topics and things looking at, and they're all listed sort of in charts, so you can compare, like here's Orthodox Judaism, and it's talking about, what does it say about sin, salvation, the afterlife, synagogue, just different things. This one is a little bit more of a brief one, a compact guide to world religions. And this is a pretty good one too. So I recommend you take a look at those and maybe pick one up. I think it's important for us to know what's out there so that when we're talking to somebody who's of a different faith, and I would encourage you at some point during this class to do that. Now, when I say of a different faith, primarily I'm talking about outside of Christianity. Now, I think most of us here are somewhat transplants within Christianity. So we may be familiar with another form of Christianity. I grew up as a Catholic, so I sort of know that end of Christianity. And maybe you grew up a Methodist or a Presbyterian. Some of the mainline denominations, and if you're not familiar with denominational Christianity, then by all means talk to somebody who's in a mainline denomination, and see how it is that they practice their faith and some of the things that they believe in. But I think you get more out of it if you have an opportunity to talk to somebody of one of the faiths that we're going to study here, and get their thoughts and speak with them. And believe it or not, you may find this statement surprising. One of the easiest faith systems to talk to are Muslims. Muslims, they enjoy talking religion. They love talking religion. And they will sit and listen. As a rule, I've talked to many, and as a rule, they're happy to let you sit and share the gospel with them and talk about Jesus and everything. And they'll talk to you about their faith. Getting them to commit to a salvation, good luck. That's a different story. But they're very approachable, and it's, again, more than anything, it's an opportunity for us to familiarize ourselves. When I was taking this in college, we actually had to do a practicum where we had to find somebody of a different religion and interview them and talk to them. And I talked to this Chinese gentleman, and we talked about not Buddhism, because most people think Buddhism is China, but it's not. Buddhism is Tibet, primarily. The Chinese have, and one of the things we're going to talk about is what's called Chinese popular religions. And there's a number of, there's Taoism, Confucianism, and there's some interesting sort of ancestral worship kind of stuff that goes on. And I talked to him about it, and where the Chinese sort of get this idea of good luck and fortune cookies, and even though fortune cookie is an American invention, but this idea of good fortune and things. I learned a lot by talking to this gentleman. He was pretty agnostic, atheistic, but he shared with me a lot of things from the Chinese religion. So I would encourage you, if you get an opportunity to talk to a Muslim, talk to a Jew, talk to a Hindu, a Buddhist, whatever, and get an opportunity to get their perspective. Yeah.
Wasn't Gautama, I think that's how you pronounce his first name?
Gautama.
Buddha was he was a Hindu, wasn't he? Yeah, he was Indian.
Buddhism was born out of the rejection of Hinduism.
Right.
Siddhartha Gautama, the original Buddha, the Buddha, was Indian.
Right.
So it grew out of Hinduism. So now, you notice nothing mentioned in here about God. Generally speaking, when we talk about religion, there is some kind of a deity that is worshipped, that is involved in the system. However, that's not always the case. Buddhism, for example, is sort of, it can go either way. They If you want to be, if you want to believe in gods, that's fine, but you don't have to. You can be an atheist and be a Buddhist. A lot of the Chinese religions are really not, they don't really have a deity. It's more of a belief system, so that's why sort of encompassing this. Now, one thing that is not going to be encompassed in this definition, again, we know we've heard it from Pastor Bill that atheism is a religion, and by a certain definition that is absolutely true. It is a belief system. But for the purpose of what we're doing in this class, I would not place atheism under this definition because their belief system does not provide value and give life meaning and coherence. Atheists don't believe in meaning and coherence. There is no creation, there is no purpose, and there is no meaning, and there is no coherence to anything, and there is no transcendence. Now, transcendence is, don't get hung up on the word, it just means, in one sense, going from here to here. Transcending, going, where am I going to? Whatever this particular faith system, almost every single faith system has some place that they're reaching toward. Whether it's a degree of enlightenment, whether it is taking on a different type of existence, or whether it's heaven or eternal security, eternal salvation. Whatever it is, there is a transcendence that is at the end of almost all religions that is saying, this is the goal, this is where we're trying to get to. Again, with atheism, we don't really have that. It's just sort of very linear, and we're just here, and then when it's over, it's over. So
they're material.
yeah, and we're gonna break some of that out a little bit later on today. So when we're talking, so these first two classes are actually going to be introductory in the sense that we're not going to look at any particular religions. The first class, we're going to be looking at worldviews today, primarily, understanding worldviews. A little bit of an apologetics class. And then next week, we're going to be looking at, on the same vein, but we're going to be looking at something called inclusivism, pluralism, inclusivism, and exclusivism, which we'll get into. It's sort of a way of looking at this idea of transcendence and truth. And, is there a truth that we need to believe in order to get to that place, or we can really believe anything we want to get to that place? Everybody's going to end up in that place, and there are varying degrees of this belief system. We're going to talk about that next week. But for today, we're going to be getting into worldviews. But as we look at the definition of religion, there are some modes involved in religion. Okay, there's what's called the existential. Okay, which is it's our experience. Okay, it is that part of our faith system that is personal to us. Okay, our faith, our personal faith, and our religious experience. There's the intellectual, which are the formal statements, the belief, the truth claims, if you will, of that particular religion, the doctrine. There's the institution. And again, almost every faith system has this. Where do you go? You go, is there an institute? Is there a place you go? A temple, a mosque, whatever it is that you go to, a church. And are there people there? Whether they're priests or clerics, or what is sort of the organizational structure of that system? And then there's the ethical, which is what do they believe about a moral code? What's right? What's wrong regarding human conduct? Is there an ought to the world? And we'll find that some religions don't necessarily have an ought, how things ought to be, and some do. And just lastly, in this introductory part, just some terms that we'll see. Belief, again, this is kind of like the intellectual. This is the truth claims. This is what the aspect of religion that is the belief system within that religion. Okay, the truth claims, the things that they believe. The experience, again, when we talk about a religious experience, it's a personal thing in the life of the follower. The religious statement is more about what did they say about God. Okay, how do they view the divine? What is their idea and their understanding of who God is and how He is, what is His substance, what is He made of? And then we will see, we see the word miracle, which is a supernatural act. That, for the most part, we'll see in theism when we get into looking at these different worldviews. But it's those things that happen outside of the material universe, that happen in the spiritual universe. So, question and answer. What is it that everyone has, no one can live without? Every important decision in life is made with, and yet most people do not even know they have. And the answer is worldview. And that's by Norman Geisler. Okay? A worldview, and I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, and they were trying to give me an example of what is a worldview. And if you look it up online, you're going to see every kind of variation of all the different worldviews. Primarily, we're looking at worldviews regarding religion, regarding God. Okay? And the decisions that we make, sometimes we can look at things we do, like, for example, this person was saying, well, is being a conservative politically, is that a worldview? And it's like, no, that's not really a worldview. That is something that gets formed by your worldview. Okay? So, a worldview is a set of presuppositions which we hold consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently. And that's important because, worldview is not like a religious dogma. Say, well, this is my worldview and I'm sticking to it. Worldviews can be fluid. Some of the details in them can be very fluid. There's a few that everybody pretty much falls under. But we can hold these things consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently about the basic makeup of the world. Again, this is a definition. You could look it up. There's probably 50 definitions of what a worldview is. This was by James Sire. This one, to me, wrapped it up because it is an underpinning of everything that you believe in. It's not what you believe in, but it's what causes you to believe in what you're believing in. Okay? It's how a person views and interprets reality. It's the framework of our beliefs by which we understand the world around us. Okay? It affects how we think and how we act. It influences personal meaning and values, and the most important question that it addresses is where did we come from? Okay, it is, and we're going to study 3 what I call foundational worldviews, and those 3 foundational worldviews we're then going to break down into 7 major worldviews that fall into those categories. So we see that it is a very broad foundational mindset. So, why do we study worldviews? In Matthew 22, 23 to 24, we don't have to turn there, but this is an example of Jesus understanding a worldview. He's talking to the Sadducees. And the Sadducees come to him and start talking about, if a man marries a woman, then he dies, and then his brother marries him and he dies, and remember that passage? And then his brother marries him and he dies, and his brother marries him and he dies, And then who is he married to? Who is she married to when she dies? And Jesus, understanding the Sadducee worldview, they don't believe in the supernatural. They don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe in heaven. They don't believe any of it. So, he understands where they're coming from. And his answer is, well, you don't even know what you're saying. You know, it's not a matter of, because they were trying to prove that there is no afterlife, and he just went out and said, he didn't try to prove the afterlife, he just said there is no marriage in the afterlife. So your question is kind of dumb. But he understood where they were coming from. Okay? And it's like Paul in Acts 17. You know, they're like, oh, this babbler, this idiot. He doesn't even know what he's saying. Bring him, come on, let's see what he has to say. I'm sure he has nothing to say. And they dragged him to the Areopagus. And he got up and he addressed things that meant something to them. He used terminology that they could understand. You know, and he even quoted some of their poets. I mean, Paul, just being a brilliant, scholarly man, knew some of the things that even their poets say. And he knew about the, you know, the monument to the unknown God. You know, so he understood their worldview, and in understanding their worldview, he was able to speak to them in a way that would cause them to listen. Because we can come at people with a Christian worldview, with our worldview, and be trying to ram it down people's throat, not understanding that they're not even coming from that, you know, that perspective. You know, we live in, you know, in the United States, we live in the Western world, and we have a way of looking at things. There is an Eastern mindset, there are other mindsets that view reality from a completely different aspect. And even here, you know, we can run into people that just, you know, we're saying stuff and they're like, this means nothing to me. You might as well be talking in another language because it means nothing to me. But if we can talk to people in a way that they can understand, and ultimately, you know, the purpose is in 2 Timothy, and we will turn there. If you have your Bible, you can turn there, 2 Timothy 2. Find it in our Bible, it's not your own, it's a little tricky. 2 Timothy 2. Starting in verse 24. And a servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach, patient in humility, correcting those who are in opposition, if God perhaps will grant them repentance, so that they may know the truth and then may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. And that last phrase is an important thing for us to remember. These people that are stuck in worldviews that are unbiblical, they're captives of the devil. Okay? 2 Corinthians 4:4 says that the God of this world has blinded them, that they would not receive the gospel. And, you know, our ultimate goal in sharing the gospel with somebody is not to prove that we're right, but is to help them to understand who God is. And the better we understand where they're coming from, the easier it's going to be for us to reach them. So that's why it's important for us to look at worldviews. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at these different aspects. They're all from the three foundational worldviews. We're going to see what the view of God is, the view of origins, the view of man, the view of morality, and the view of destiny. And before we get into talking about the three foundational worldviews, I want to, there's two words really, terminology that I want us to understand, because it has to do with the worldviews, okay, and with regard to understanding of God. And there is transcendence and immanence. Okay? Anybody want to take a stab at either one of those? Not as hard as you think. Okay? Transcendent, this is with regard to our view of God. Okay? Transcendence says that God is separate from me. I am not God. Okay? There is a God, and he is not me. He is other than me. Okay? Immanence says God is everywhere. You know, transcendence says God is separate from his creation. God created something and he is separate from that creation. Okay? Immanence says God is one with his creation. Okay? There is no personal God. God exists in all of us and in everything, and he is not transcendent. He does not exist apart from us. That's where God is. God is in everything. Okay? And this is important as we get into the three foundational worldviews. The three foundational worldviews that we're going to look at are atheism, pantheism, and theism. Now I put this one down here. It's kind of faded out because it really does not apply today. It's virtually extinct. Polytheism, true polytheism is Greek mythology, the Roman gods, the Norse gods, you know, Thor and all those guys, and Jupiter and Hera and all. That's the true pagan polytheism. You know, like they had in Canaan, the different Baals, you know, that you see in the Old Testament. They worship many gods. There is one example of polytheism sort of in existence today. Anybody have any idea what it is? And I'll give you a hint. It's not Hinduism. Okay, many people think that Hinduism is polytheism because they do believe in hundreds of thousands of gods. But when we study Hinduism, we're going to find out that it's not. That Hinduism is actually pantheism.
Wiccan?
What's that?
Wiccan?
Wiccan is, you know, perhaps, but Wiccan is more like Satanism. It's a, you know, it's witch, it's white witch and that kind of stuff. And they believe in spirits. It's almost a little bit more spiritism and animism. And it's a little different from polytheism because it's like Native American religions, you know, which we're not really, we can talk about it a little bit, we're not going to study much of it. You know, there's the spirit of this and the spirit of that, and the spirit that everything in nature has a spirit to it. But no, believe it or not,
Baha'i?
the one, what's that?
Baha'i?
No, Baha'i is monotheistic. Mormonism. Because, what's that? Because, exactly, because we can, in Mormonism, we can all become a god and go on and be given our own planet and become the god of that planet. Now, they are monotheistic in practice. If you ask a Mormon, they only believe in one God. Matter of fact, they're adamant about one God. They are not, you know, they will fight you on the Trinity. They don't believe in the Trinity. You know, that they are very monotheistic. But in sort of extension, and when you follow Mormonism to its extension, and we will be studying Mormonism, you can become a god and be given your own planet to be a god of. So theoretically, there are many gods out there over many planets. But that's a little bit of a stretch. It's not truly what polytheism is. We don't really see polytheism being practiced today, so I don't really consider it a worldview. Okay? The worldviews we're going to be looking at are atheism, pantheism, theism. Atheism, there is no God, there is no God at all, period. God does not exist. Now, we can put variations in that. We can even include agnostics in that, which agnostics say, generally agnostics say, I don't believe that there's a God. I'm not saying absolutely there is no God, but I just personally don't believe that there is a God. I don't know, I don't care, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's an agnostic. And generally speaking, if somebody says they're an atheist, if you've got a little bit of apologetic in you, you can get them to admit they're an agnostic. Because you can pretty much show anybody that atheism is kind of a dumb position to have. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You can't, because in order to be a true atheist, you have to possess all the information there is in the universe. Because as Ravi Zacharias put it one time, he had this guy who said, there is no God, I know there is no God. He says, do you know everything there is in the universe? He says, well, no. He says, do you know half of everything in the universe? And the guy says, no. Ravi Zacharias said, okay, then, you know what, I'm going to stipulate to you that you know half of everything that there is in the universe. Is it possible that God exists in the half that you don't know? You know, so it doesn't take much to get somebody to say, well, okay, maybe there's a God, who knows, who cares, okay, that's an agnostic. But atheism, I still put agnosticism in that category, because that's their belief system. You know, that they don't believe that there's a God. Pantheism is this. Immanence. They believe in the absolute immanence of God. Everything is God. There is no God but all. God is not a personal being. God is what flows in the universe. The universe is God. I am God. And part of the problem that I have is I don't realize that I'm God. I don't realize that there's a piece of God in me. And then theism, which is there is a God, and there is no God but Him. So, again, just some, where it's coming from, atheistic, atheos, a means none or without, and theos is God, so without God. And monotheistic or theistic, one, the word theos is for God. Pantheistic, pan means entire or all, and again with theos, so all is God, and God is all. Okay? So, where do we find these? Okay? Atheistic, we're going to see in humanism, various branches of Buddhism. Okay? And like I said, there's variations. Philosophically, there's atheism, agnosticism, and skepticism. Monotheistic, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In addition to that, Baha'i, because Baha'i is sort of an offshoot of Islam, and Zoroastrianism also is monotheistic. Some forms of Hinduism are monotheistic. It's what's called henotheism, which is they say, look, this is my God, this is the only God there is, but if other people want to worship other gods, that's okay too. But we believe that this is the one only God. And as we get into Hinduism, we're going to find that because they're pantheistic, all these different gods that Hindus believe in are really, they're avatars. They are sort of representations of Brahman. Brahman is the ultimate God. We'll get into more details when we study Hinduism, but the many gods that they do are just sort of representations of the ultimate reality, which is Brahman. But some of them may pick one and say, no, this is the only one that I worship, and so they're monotheistic in that sense. And then pantheistic, we're going to see that in Hinduism, some forms of Buddhism, New Age religions, animism, like we were talking about, and some native folk religions. So, as we get into this view of God, okay, again, atheism, there is no God. God, does not exist in or beyond the universe. All there is matter. We see that with Karl Marx, Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre. Pantheism. Again, as we said, there's no God outside the universe. The universe is all there is. God is the universe. And some will say that the mind, that's where God resides. The mind is all there is. Okay, in theism, there is an infinite personal God. And again, this applies to Judaism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. An infinite personal God exists beyond and in the universe. Okay? Created and sustains the universe, acts within it. The universe displays both matter and mind. Again, examples, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. Origins. Okay? With atheism, either the universe is eternal or it came out of nothing. And evolution is their Bible, if you will. For atheists, evolution explains everything. Because it's a real problem, where we came from, how we got here, how we got to be where we are. They need to answer that question. And that is why people, when Darwin came up with the origin of the species, people flocked to it like crazy because they were, You know, this was the time of Nietzsche, and Nietzsche was, you know, one of the things that Nietzsche said, he's the one that claimed that God is dead. And he is an atheist, so he didn't believe that God died, but he was saying the concept of God had died. People were no longer believing in God, so they needed something to believe in. Darwin gave them evolution. So evolution is their, in a sense, is their religion. So in pantheism, the universe is eternal. The universe has always been here. It's all there ever is. It may have taken on different manifestations, but there always has been the universe because the universe is God. And there is no distinction between God, the universe, and man. Theism, the universe is not eternal. Created out of nothing by God, who transcends his creation. And matter, everything we see around us, is created and finite. View of man. Atheism says there is no God. Man is the measure of all things. In essence, figuratively speaking, man is God. Because we decide everything. We decide what's right, we decide what's wrong, we decide what is, what isn't. We decide what truth is. You know, man is the measure of all things. In pantheism, while in atheism, man is figuratively God because they don't believe in God. In pantheism, man is literally God because everything is God. And the biggest problem is that we don't realize that we're God. In theism, man is a finite creature created by a loving personal creator, and man and God will forever be distinct. Okay? Morality. With atheism, there is no absolute moral standard. Because there is no, we create our own laws. Society decides what's right and what's wrong. You know, and we see it, you know, as we sort of forge our way into a more atheistic society, we're seeing the laws going by the wayside and people deciding, oh, this is now true. We get to decide what's true. We get to decide what's moral, what's not moral. And, you know, things get all turned upside down when man decides. And what they don't realize is they, in a sense, they dig their own grave. You know, because as this one guy put it, he says, look, if I decide I want to walk up to you and punch you in the face for no reason whatsoever, and I say, look, for me, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, who are you to tell me that I'm wrong? If I decide I want to kill you, or I want to kill somebody in your family, hey, I need to do it. Maybe they were in my way. That's my belief system. I believe that to be true. Now, we have laws in the country that will punish me for doing that. But on a moral level, if there is no morality, then I get to say that's perfectly moral. Now, the law may condemn me, but on a moral level, I can you know, stand and say there's nothing wrong with that. And that's, you know, the atheists don't realize that that's where it goes to. Another thing that Ravi Zacharias says is that, you know, there are very few real atheists. If you want to see some real atheists, look at guys like Hitler, like you know, Stalin, Mussolini, you know, Pol Pot, you know, because these are guys who say, look, I can do whatever I want so long as I don't get caught. As long as I don't lose in the end, then I can do whatever I want. And that's the atheistic mindset. Is I can do, you know, there is no morality. So there is no good in pantheism. There is still no absolute moral standard outside of us. Okay, morality is relative. Ultimately, there is no good or evil because all is one, and there is no such thing as sin. It's very similar to atheism because there is no, you know, there is no absolutism. There is no standard to measure up to. But they do have axioms that they live by. Because they say, look, you can do whatever you want morally, but if you want peace in your life, then conduct yourself in this way. If you want to have balance in your life, you conduct yourself in this way. And, you know, and that kind of thing. But from a moral standpoint, you know, sin is an illusion. All that stuff is all an illusion to pantheists.
Is that like karma?
Yeah. Yeah, and karma is not an issue of sin or not sin, or moral or not moral. It's a way that the universe tries to balance itself, you know, against the things that you do. The universe has decided that the things that you have done are not worthy of you progressing to the next level, so therefore you have to, you know, come back and repeat it. View of destiny. Atheism, there is no destiny. Death is the end of existence. Okay? There is no immortality. Only the race itself, the human race itself, is immortal. You know, life is ultimately without purpose and meaning. And you can't, and as much as they want to say, oh, well, my life has meaning, my children, and that's, you know, certainly there is meaning in this life. You can find purpose in this life, but ultimately, you know, I'm trying to think if there's another book that Ravi Zacharias wrote called Can Man Live Without God? And the idea of the book was not to prove the existence of God. It was to show that there is something in man that needs to believe in God. That not believing in God brings man ultimately to a place of utter despair. And that, you know, so the idea is, can man live without God? Or at least the concept of God, that man needs to and strives to believe that there is some kind of a God, otherwise he feels that he has no purpose or significance. Pantheism, the Hindus, which is primarily what's going to represent pantheism, believe in what's called samsara, or with the wheel of reincarnation. So it's a cycle that so the end of life is just the beginning of another life. You move on. Now you may move up and become closer to enlightenment, or you may move back and further away from enlightenment, and, you know, depending on where you are on the wheel and the karma that you have built up. They believe in immortality through reincarnation. And the purpose in life is to merge with God, and you lose your individual identity. So in pantheism, if you finally reach that nth degree, you have reached the pinnacle, and you don't have you've gotten off the wheel, as they call it, and you have reached that level of enlightenment. You are, as they describe it, it's like a drop of water in the ocean. You are like that drop, and you end up in the universe like that drop of water in the ocean. You become one with it. You become part of it. You become indistinct with the universe. You know, to me, that's ceasing to exist. If I have no more consciousness of who I am, and my consciousness is merged with all the other consciousnesses in the universe. But that's their ultimate, and everybody eventually will end up there at some point. It may take them many, many times on the wheel to get there, but everybody eventually is going to get there. So, theism, for Christians, death is the beginning of life in God's presence. In theistic religions, there is a life, an afterlife. There is a place to go that God is calling us to. And that individuals do exist eternally. You know, whether with God or separated from Him. And there's going to be some variations as we study some different belief systems. But generally speaking, in theism, you know, there is a heaven, there's a place that you're trying to go to. There is an immortality that you're striving for. You know, and that the purpose of life is to worship and eternally fellowship with God. So, we're going to look at a total of 7 major worldviews that are going to be a breakdown of these 3. This is kind of where we're going to be wrapping things up. You know, well, let's just look at theism, okay, that we've already talked about. Okay, infinite God exists beyond it in the universe. God is personal. Okay, sustains the universe, supernatural acts. That's theism. Within theism, we also see what's called deism. Okay? Deism is all about this. God is totally transcendent. God is so transcendent that not only is he so separate from the universe, but he actually has nothing to do with it anymore. He wound the clock, and then he stepped back, and he's just letting it run out. And God does not put his hand in things and does not involve himself in the affairs of men. Okay? They hold to a naturalistic view of the world. So they believe that there is a God. They're kind of like the Sadducees. They believe that there's a God, but he's just up there doing his thing, and he has nothing to do with us, and everything that's going on down here is naturalistic. There's no miracles, there's nothing supernatural, you know. And whether or not we go to be with God in the end doesn't really matter. You know, God is there, and he's just sort of given us a moral code to live by, and we do the best we can. That's sort of a deistic mindset. You know, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine. But even some of these guys, like Ben Franklin, you know, it's interesting that they're self-proclaimed deists, yet they also have declared the importance of prayer, which seems ironic. Why would you pray to a God who wants nothing to do with you? So it's it's interesting that a lot of the world likes to tout these men, the founders of our country, as deists, which only a handful of them were, like Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine.
Was Washington?
No. No, he was not
He was a
deist.
Christian.
What's that? What did you say?
Washington was a Christian.
Yeah, Washington was a Christian. For sure. And these guys are Christians. They would tell you that they're Christians. The deists, for the most part, would tell you that they're Christians. But they just sort of believe that, they're very naturalistic. They're usually very intellectual, and they are practicing atheists because they don't necessarily involve themselves with the affairs of God, because God's not really involving himself with the affairs of men. They just see God as being a moral lawgiver, and that it's important to follow the moral code. Finite Godism is very rare, but there is a finite God who is beyond it in the universe, but he's limited. This is the idea that, God wants, there's evil in the universe. Why is there evil in the universe? Well, God can't control it. There's not a whole lot that God can do. God is limited in the things that he can do, in his nature and his power. God is unable to overcome evil. Rabbi Harold Kushner is another one who was somebody who was like that, finite Godism. That they believe in God, but he's not really all that godish. Okay? It's sort of their way of explaining things that we see in the universe. Again, a naturalistic mindset. And those who were in the apologetic class last time understand that there's reasons why there's evil in the world. And, we won't get into that here, but it's not because God is not able. It's not because God is limited in his power. And then we have polytheism. Again, this falls under theism. It is a form, more than one finite God in the universe. And God tends to be finite in polytheism, like the ancient mythological gods. They had flaws, they had issues, they could be killed. There was something finite to them. They were not infinite, but they were very powerful. And that they're active in the universe. Each god has his own thing. There's the god of the sun, the god of the moon, the god of the sky, the god of the earth, and all that kind of stuff. They have their own little domain. Atheism. Okay, and we talked about atheism as a worldview, but just to look at breaking it down a little bit, secular humanism and material humanism as some, we talked about being an agnostic, being a skeptic, but these are somewhat separate philosophies within atheism. Secular humanism embraces human reason, and this is where they believe in ethics and morals, and that man does not need a God in order to give them their ethics and their morals. That man is capable of being ethical and moral without religion or God. Doesn't assume that humans are either good or evil, that they're just neutral. Now, material humanism is still a form of atheism, is still a form of humanism. All of these is called humanism because it's lifting humans, lifting man up as God, if you will. That man is the end all and be all. But their focus is on that all reality is only made up of matter. They study what's called dialectical materialism, which is an idea that there is what is, and there is what isn't. And if I want to get to, because it's very philosophical, usually politically, that's why it's also Marxism and Leninism, because it's sort of it's a socio-economic political mindset that says, look, things are this way, and we think they should be this way. So we need to struggle, we need to work to change reality. You know, there is no absolute reality or the way things should be in a sense, but we determine that things ought to be this way. So the struggle is sort of where you find truth, if you want to call it that, in an atheistic mindset. And that's why, you know, ethics are all wrapped up in economics and sociology. You know, and we see that, you know, being born out today, in not just in Marxism and in communist countries, but even in the United States, in some people that are in some very ultra-liberal socialistic positions will sort of view all things. The measure of ethics is in who has what. If you have too much, then that's wrong, because this guy has too little. And we need to somehow make it so that you don't have too much and he doesn't have too little. And what you do to this guy that has too much doesn't really matter, because the whole point is we've got to get, you know, so they create their own ethical viewpoint.
Unfortunately, they rarely include themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then we have pantheism that we talked about, right? God is all and all is God. And then within that, there's panentheism. Okay, that, and in this, it's God is immanent, but God is also somewhat transcendent because He is becoming God. Is sort of the way that they put it. You know, that you know, God is to the universe as a mind is to the body. You know, that the universe is material aspect and immaterial aspect. God does not completely control the universe. He influences it, and it's called process theology because He, you know, God's out there and He is supernatural and He is great. You know, it's a little bit like finite Godism because He's not quite in control of everything, but He's doing the best He can, and He is getting better at it, and He's becoming God. But it is still very pantheistic because it's, you know, it's still a matter of this, whatever this God being is part of the universe, but it's still slightly outside of the universe. So it's a little bit somewhere between pantheism and theism. So, what I'd like to do if I can, so next week, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about pluralism, inclusivism, and exclusivism. And I'll give you a sneak peek, and don't leave until I get everybody the syllabus, and you can take a look at everything that we're going to be doing. I handed out the charts here, so you can kind of look at some of the worldview stuff that we talked about today in detail. But essentially, pluralism is, there is no truth. The truth is where you find it. You know, it's a type of universalism that, okay, everybody is going to end up, you know, where they decide they want to go. That whatever you believe is enough. You know, the only important thing is that you believe in something. okay, and that, you know, the Muslims will go to be with Allah, you know, the Christians will go to be with Jesus, and the Hindus will, and everybody will go to wherever it is they're supposed to go. Doesn't matter what you believe, there is no absolute truth, so long as you believe in something. Inclusivism is something that we really find ourselves looking at today, particularly in Christianity. Inclusivism says, yes, there is a truth, there is an absolute truth. And the only way to, you know, and that's the only place to go. However, it doesn't really matter how you get there. That, for example, you know, we see in Christianity that certain belief system within Christianity will say, look, Jesus is the only way to salvation. But that doesn't mean that putting your faith in Him is the only way to salvation. That Jesus will take people into heaven who are good Muslims, who are good Hindus, you know. They're good people, they follow the precepts, Jesus will accept them, they're included. You know, these Christians still believe, oh, Jesus is Lord, Jesus is the only Lord there is, but He's going to include everybody in that believes in something and is good and moral.
Some of the popes going right now?
Vatican II is what started it. You know, Vatican II, back in the 60s, kind of came out and said, you know, while we believe this to be true, we believe that people of other faiths will also be welcomed in. You know, so it started back then, but yeah, we've sort of progressively gone in that direction. And then exclusivism is, this is the truth, and there's only one way to it. Now, Christianity, biblical Christianity is exclusivistic. Islam is exclusivistic. You know, this is the way. There is only one way to it. This is the truth, and you must follow this way in order to be the truth. And we're going to sort of break some of that stuff down and talk about that. Talk about a guy named John Hick, who was a big proponent of this stuff. Any questions? Comments?
You said the Buddhists were atheists. I thought they thought that Buddha was God or something, no?
Not necessarily. They can. They can worship Buddha. They can look at him as a god, although, you know, there have been many Buddhas. Buddhas are men who have reached a level of enlightenment. And the original Buddha was a man named Siddhartha Gautama. And he was the first Buddha that reached this level of enlightenment, and he teaches these rules of how to ascend into this level of enlightenment. And if believing in a god or worshiping a Buddha helps you to do that, then that's fine. You can do that, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to believe in any god in order to be Buddha, in order to be Buddhist. They don't even necessarily see it as a crutch. That's just your path. That's just the path you chose, you know. They don't even necessarily see it as a weaker way. It's just a different way. You know, so it can go either way. It doesn't necessarily rely on a deity, because they come out of Hinduism. Even when they worship Buddha, they don't necessarily see him as a deity in the same sense that we do. You know, they're still almost sort of pantheistic, where he's sort of a representation of, you know, a god of some kind. So, because all the Buddhas were just men. You know, none of them were, you know, came from heaven or anything like that. They just ascended enlightened men. Any questions?
They can't account for the metaphysical properties of the human being, the mind, rationalism.
Well, atheism can't account for that.
No, it's
But this is where, you know, Hinduism and Buddhism, they're trying to account for all that stuff. So, you know, the metaphysical part of man. How do you account for consciousness?
Right.
You know, that's something that an atheist is a hard time explaining. I mean, they can talk about, well, it's just chemicals. Consciousness is a pretty freaky thing.
Yeah,
You
voice
know?
robots, as Frank calls it.
Yeah, you know, so it's something that you can't, you know, put your finger on
Right.
and can't identify. It's not, there's something unnatural about it, if you will, supernatural about it. And so atheists have a hard time. But that's what well, you know, ultimately that's where so many religions are really trying to go, is trying to make sense of the metaphysics, trying to make sense of consciousness, and do we have a soul, and what does that soul require, and what is it, you know, where is it supposed to go, and what is our purpose, and all that kind of stuff. So. Questions?
In Philadelphia, I saw Ben Franklin's grave. He was a deist. I thought he was a deist. I don't remember the exact wording, but there's a big slide, you know, piece of cement over his grave. And I don't remember the exact wording, but he did believe in a resurrection,
Yeah.
which
You
is
know,
surprising for a deist.
These guys were not, you know, again, these guys, you know, were not that, they considered themselves deists because they were very naturalistic. But they were not deists in the truest sense of the word, because again, they, you know, Benjamin Franklin called for prayer. You know, he encouraged the members of Congress to pray to God. You know, I think one of his lines he talked about praying to a God. You know, it's something to do with the odds of creating this new country that a less gracious God would not allow.
So they did believe in it.
Speaking of the graciousness of God, that the fact that we were even able to form this country was an act of God's grace. And so it was a comment along that line. But so you know, they weren't true deists. But and this is one of the things that we're going to find in all these religions. And that's why, you know, one of the things that we're going to try to do is we have some folks here representing some different religions other than Christianity that have been in them and have practiced them, that I'm going to be asking some of them to share some of their experiences, because we can talk about the doctrine, we can talk about the dogma, and you know, these are the statements of faith, these are the general belief systems, but you'll find that the way it's lived out is very different. You know, like, you know, just as an example, and you know, and hopefully Bob will confirm this for me. Today, the majority of Judaism is really kind of atheistic. I mean, they believe in a God, but it's almost like, well, just believe in God because it'll make you a better person. And that's all it's all about. They don't necessarily believe that we're going to heaven. You know, you know, particularly the Reform Jews. Now, obviously, now I'm talking about the Orthodox or even conservative, but a lot of the Reform Jews, it's not even an issue for them. You know, and we think of Judaism, well, we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about Judaism as being a theistic religion and all this kind of stuff, and we're going to study the history of Judaism, the Old Testament. And a lot of times as Christians, we think of Judaism, we think of the Old Testament. And we're going to find today that Judaism today does not resemble the Old Testament Judaism at all. So, you know, Dr. Bob's one of the guys I'm going to see if he'll
They
go into.
don't really keep the law. They go by the Talmud,
Yeah.
the oral law, which is inducted.
And what we're going to find is that all religions have their belief system, and then there's the way that it's lived out. And sometimes it's very different, and I think it's important to see how it ends up getting lived out. Sometimes it's lived out differently than what the dogma, and you find out that some people have been living in a religious system and found out that's what we're supposed to believe. I didn't know that. You know, so we'll try to look into that.
What you were saying about Benjamin Franklin, so those guys believed there was a God, they just weren't rigid on who he was.
Yeah, and they just didn't believe that he was terribly interested in they didn't believe in the supernatural. They didn't believe that God got intimately involved in the affairs of men. So, because they were very naturalistic, they were very relied on science, and don't go asking God for miracles and things, and they didn't believe that miracles happened and that anything supernatural could happen. Everything could be explained naturally. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you again for this class, and we just ask that over the next 7 more weeks that you would help us to understand, Father, really the work that the enemy has done in the minds of people to distract them from the true and living God, and help us to just be preparing our hearts and minds that we can speak truth to them in a way that they can hear it. So Father, we again just thank you for this class. Bless us now as we go. And we offer you the remainder of this evening in Jesus' name.